I call to order the meeting of the Verona Planning Commission for Monday, May 4th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. We'll begin with the roll.
Matt Ulat. Say here.
Here. Oh, sorry, here.
Wood.
Here.
Commissioner Powers is absent. Mayor Diaz.
Here.
Taylor.
Here.
Swanson.
Here.
And Commissioner Hankard is absent.
Okay, we have enough people for quorum, so we can proceed. We'll move on to item 3, which is public comment. If any members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so.
I'm just going to read from my notes so that I stay focused here a little bit. I'm pretty fortunate. I get to drive my kids pretty much all over this area. So, I get through Middleton, Fitchburg, downtown Madison, east side of Madison. That's pretty much my life. Sometimes that's pros and cons, but I do get the chance to see those communities and be in those different communities and kind of compare them to kind of Verona. I've lived here for 18 years. This is my home. Madison, I started off, I went to school in Madison, downtown. It's like a college town. It's kind of really the cultural, maybe the economic center of this area. Middleton has always felt like an upscale, kind of fully formed mini city. Has its own downtown area, but it kind of feels kind of an upscale type of town. Fitchburg has always felt kind of spread out to me. Didn't really feel like it has a center. I think that adds some flexibility there because I think that in Fitchburg you do see mixes of businesses and mixed together with communities and housing, especially on, I guess, what is that, PD there? Verona has always had kind of a small town feel. And it's one of the things I really liked about it, and I still like about it. We have the Hometown USA. That's our nameplate or whatever you call it. Coupled with great schools. That's why my wife and I, we moved here when we did. Over the last 18 years, there's been a lot of change. Obviously the city's expanded. The borders have changed. There's been additional housing added. Along with that, the city has kind of also changed its kind of look and feel, right? So is it losing some of its kind of small town charm? Maybe. Maybe it's maturing into something else. And that's for you guys to decide as you guys move forward. But in my opinion, it's starting to look kind of more like Middleton and more like Fitchburg, and less kind of like its own little community hometown feel. As you guys consider the new comprehensive plan, I think you guys maybe have agendas coming up here soon for comprehensive plan changes that are going to get approved. Obviously, you always have projects coming in front of you. And during your planning commission activities, I just ask that you take into consideration the shape, the culture, the vibe, that does it fit our Hometown USA nameplate that we've always had? Or, are we trying to become Fitchburg? Or are we kind of leaning into a Middleton? And I know that, there's a lot of pressure to grow, but I do think that there's a lot of positives that we have here in Verona. For example, I love the downtown area. Going to Miller's, I don't know how long that's been there before that I ever got here, right? But that downtown area feels like very small town to me. We get downtown and there's like local owned shops, and I say, let's keep that going. That's a very good positive for me. I love that the neighborhoods in general feel really connected. I used to run around the city about 10 miles, and I go through all these neighborhoods, through the paths, and then come all the way back, roll around to my own home. So it's always felt really super connected to me. I'm concerned kind of on some of the speed that we are growing. I think in some areas we have grown so fast, it feels like sometimes we haven't really considered the traffic, or maybe have considered, but maybe projects together that just add up to, for example, M now. I don't know how many stoplights we're going to have on M, especially once you get some of that new projects built there. I mean, it doesn't feel like I personally don't feel like I want Verona to have 5 stoplights between coming in from Madison to get to the downtown. It feels like that's where we're headed. So that concern just about how fast we're growing. I love the local identity. I mean, we have these hometown days and fireworks. I mean, I would love to see that expand. I mean, I don't know if you guys do that as part of the planning commission or if that's just common council, but I would love to see that continue to be expand. And just in general, I think be intentional about the traffic and the pace. I mean, especially around the downtown area, I'd hate to see that area, we have bigger stoplights and, more stoplights. And I mean, obviously we have to control the traffic down there. Becomes a problem. But just be more intentional with kind of the choices and everything. And that was all my comments. Does anybody have questions? I don't know if you're allowed to question or.
Generally, it's discouraged by our attorney. So, so if anyone wants to ignore the attorney's advice, I guess, but I'd prefer
It's,
if you, I'd
it's
prefer
about
if you
what we're
didn't.
doing tonight. It's all on the agenda, I do think, but nope. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We are still in public comment. So if anyone else wishes to speak, this now would be the time to do so.
Hello. My name's Anthony, and this is my daughter, Naomi. We've lived in Verona for about 5 years, and we love it here. Our kids plan to go to school here for a while. I am here to speak in support of and to urge you to move in one of the items regarding fitness facility parking. Naomi is holding her beloved pickle here because we are a big pickleball family. And the current parking restrictions make it difficult for an aspiring business owner to open a pickleball facility in Verona. So that is our hope, that you would consider that to allow local business owners to keep business local here and to open up a small pickleball facility where parking restrictions are a little bit more welcome to it. We felt it was important to both come here tonight because maybe it would help to know that the people inquiring about pickleball parking live right down the street. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. We are still in public comment. So if anyone else wishes to speak, now would be the time to do so.
Hey there, I'm Dustin Pate with Colliers. I'll kind of jump on Anthony here as well. So I represent a landlord and a couple landlords in Verona here on the commercial real estate leasing side. And just we'll second his take that it has made leasing more, I guess, a bit tougher for recreational type users. Those types of users have also become a major part of kind of industrial or flex use. And so, I would be in support of taking a closer look at that parking requirement and making some, some discretionary decisions or kind of more common sense view of the way those facilities require parking to facilitate getting more amenities into the community and spurring on further economic development as well. So thanks again. I appreciate staff and Planning Commission taking a look at this.
Thank you. We are still in public comment. So if anyone else wishes to speak, now would be the time to do so.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan. I did not plan to talk today, but given the last two kind of people that spoke up, we're in a similar situation that we're going to talk about later, where I do kind of think parking restrictions are a big deal in this town, where we will bring a project to you all that hopefully kind of fits the vibe of both the first speaker of kind of a hometown feel, not a big Kiva complex or anything like that, but something smaller, more quaint in the area, more city or small town feel rather than the big complex. So I'm Dan. This is my wife, Mary Kay. We're here, local business owners. Usually at city events, we're probably the second biggest attraction other than the Ferris wheel. The big inflatables, that's us. We're Verona Bounce. So we're part of the community, and we want to bring something another big thing to the community for kids and families alike. So we'll see you later.
Thank you. We are still in public comment. So if anyone else, if anyone else wishes to speak, now would be the time to do so. Seeing no one else approaching the microphone, we will close public comment and we will move on to item 4, which is approval of minutes from the March 2nd, 2026 Plan Commission meeting. Questions, comments, corrections, or motions to approve? Alder Swanson.
I move to approve.
Motion by Alder Swanson. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Wood. Last chance for corrections. Seeing no corrections, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the March 2nd, 2026 Plan Commission meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And the minutes are approved. We'll move on to item 5, which is regarding the conditional use permit for the permanent outdoor display located at 600 Hometown Circle. Mr. Severson, can you give us a brief overview before we do the legally required public hearing on this topic?
Yes. Public hearing is being held for a conditional use permit to allow a permanent outdoor display at 600 Hometown Circle. Legal notice was published in the Verona Press. Personal notice was sent to properties within 250 feet, and a sign was posted in front of the subject property.
Thank you. With that, I will move that we open the public hearing on this topic. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Swanson. All those in favor of opening the public hearing on this topic, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. And the public hearing is open at 6:42 p.m. So if anyone wants to comment specifically on the conditional use permit for the outdoor display located at 600 Hometown Circle, now would be the time to do so. Seeing nobody approaching the table, I will move that we close the public hearing on this topic. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Swanson. All those in favor of closing the public hearing on this topic, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. And the public hearing is closed at 6:42 p.m. Mr. Severson.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting, as I said, a conditional use permit for a permanent outdoor display of merchandise located at 600 Hometown Circle. Yes. There we go.
There we go.
The subject property is owned and used by Farm and Fleet. It's located in the suburban commercial zoning district and is surrounded by Dane County-owned land to the north, a grocery store to the east, strip center and vacant daycare center to the south, and a hotel and office building to the west. The applicant is requesting approval to display sheds in 2 areas highlighted, one in green, one in orange. The orange shaded area would be used in the spring and summer, and the green shaded area would be used in the fall and winter. The display of the shed would be limited to the parking stalls and would not be permitted to extend into the drive aisles. While the sheds would be occupying parking stalls, those parking stalls are not heavily used and are in addition to what is required by zoning ordinance. The application meets the standards of review, and staff recommends approval of the request.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions, comments, or motions on the conditional use permit? Commissioner Wood.
I guess the only question I would have is if it's permanent outdoor, is there a requirement then if it starts to fail or, break whatever that they have to replace it, or how does that work?
Well, we do have just code maintenance
Okay.
standards, which we could probably apply just based upon the nature of the use. I would hope they wouldn't want their
They're trying to sell them.
sheds to be broken down. But yeah, fair question. And it's not just,
Okay.
broken down, or it could be, other things related to it. And yes, we have some options to make sure it's maintained.
Okay. Overall, I don't really have many concerns. It's a good use of a parking lot that is underutilized already, so that's all I got.
Other questions, comments, or motions on this item? Alder Swanson.
I'll move to approve the conditional use permit.
Motion by Alder Swanson. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Wood. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the conditional use permit for permanent outdoor display located at 600 Hometown Circle signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. We'll move on to item 6, which is the discussion and possible action regarding the certified survey map to create 1 lot and 3 outlots located at 3040 Shady Oak Lane and Arden Glen subdivision. Mr. Severson.
Thank you. The applicant has submitted a certified survey map to create 1 lot and 3 outlots abutting Shady Oak Lane. The subject property is part of Arden Glen planned development that was previously approved. The property is being purchased and developed in phases by the developer. The single lot proposed, shown in red, is currently occupied by a residential dwelling, and the outlots shown in yellow are being created to provide a means to accurately record the sale of the property. The temporary designation as an outlot will allow the property to remain as is until the developer wishes to move forward with future phases. Because the property is being designated as an outlot, cannot be improved with residential development, and will necessitate the developer to submit a plat for approval before development on the outlets can occur. So the reason I bring this up is because you may think, well, hey, don't we want to make sure our public improvements and easements and roads are dedicated? That's not necessary at this point because they will still need to come in for a plat. Staff has no concerns and recommends approval.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on this motion? Or motions? I guess I'll, Commissioner Wood.
So I guess the only question I have is, when I hear outlot, I think commercial. Is that just like, is outlot just a word that you're using in this scenario? Okay.
Outlot is it's an actual definition in the statutes. So
Okay.
outlot is basically areas that are, it's not right of way, it's privately owned land, but that it's not, it's typically used for some kind of public purpose or common area, such as like a lot of stormwater detentions are outlots. Common areas can be outlots. So it's essentially an area that's not like formally developed.
Gotcha. Then I will make a motion that, to approve the certified survey map to create 1 lot and 3 outlots abutting Shady Oak Lane.
The Plan Commission to approve to recommend to the council.
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Wood. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Swanson. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of recommending to the Common Council to approve the certified survey map to create 1 lot and 3 outlots abutting Shady Oak Lane signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to item 7, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the site plan amendment for Campus 6 located at 1979 Milky Way Drive. Mr. Severson.
Yes, thank you. The applicant is requesting a site plan amendment for Campus 6 located at 1979 Milky Way. This map shows the relation of the subject buildings to the other existing campuses. All the proposed buildings in this application will be part of Campus 6. This is showing kind of a detail side to side, showing the existing approved site plan, and this is showing the current submittal. So Floating Forest, Asland, Elvendale, and Underhill were previously approved. Dragonfell, highlighted in blue, is relocating to the south on top of the underground parking garage, which is called Black Hole. An unnamed future building is proposed at the north central portion of the campus. So this used to be Dragonfell, located up here. They kind of swapped locations. And then there's this yet to be named building up here. So that will eventually, that design will need to come back. This slide shows the changes to the design of Rogue Planet, which was previously named Long Ago Far Away. So name change, roughly the same architecture, but there has been some revisions over the past couple of years. And this slide is showing the changes to the design for Dragonfell. Staff has no concerns and recommends approval of the site plan amendment.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on this item or motions? Alder Swanson.
I'll move to have the approve recommendation to the Common Council. Or do we just pass it here?
Just
No,
just
site-
a site plan, so
Just a site plan.
Plan Commission can approve
Yeah,
it.
site
And I move
plans
to
are-
approve the site plan amendment.
Yeah. Motion by Alder Swanson. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Wood. Yeah, just a note, site plans are Plan Commission only, just to make it, confusing. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion?
Yes.
Alder Swanson.
I have a question that the answer won't change my intention to support it, but with the change in what their setup appears to be, are they just swapping the order of development and construction? Because it looks like the plan for the future Building 5 is basically the same structural setup as what they're going with for Rogue Planet. So what was going to be called Dragonfell is now moving to the far end, but it looks like they're keeping the same design for that location, basically.
More or less. I mean, I would anticipate it's going to change from between now and when it actually gets built. So I don't know if we necessarily have a good handle on the exact size of the building. It's more just the location of the building at this point.
Okay.
But regardless of the location of the building, it would still need to come back through to the Plan Commission for the design of the building.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the amended site plan to relocate one office building and modify the building materials for two office buildings located at 1979 Milky Way, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion is approved. We will move on to item 8, which is a discussion and possible action regarding an initial review for an event space located at 221 Horizon Drive. Mr. Severson.
Thank you. So as the mayor said, this is an application for an initial review for an approximately 15,000 square foot indoor entertainment facility. As such, it does not require any vote, simply just information that the Plan Commission wants to share with the applicant to help them kind of refine their design and kind of gauge how much support there's going to be for their proposal. So the subject property is located in the suburban industrial zoning district and is surrounded by Dane County parkland to the north, a mix of office buildings to the east, south, and west. The property has not yet been developed. So there's, as you can see on this, there's existing office building here, existing office building here. The proposed indoor entertainment use would occupy approximately 15,000 square foot building. All activities would be located inside the building. Access to the property is proposed from neighboring properties. As you can see on the site plan here, this roadway here is on an adjacent property. So they could access the site here. And then there's also potential access from this property to the west. The reason this is being proposed, one, it's just great to limit the number of curb cuts onto the street, but it also allows them to provide a few more parking spaces on site. The current zoning ordinance requires an indoor entertainment building of this size to provide 98 parking stalls on site. The proposed site plan shows 56 parking stalls, so they are short based upon our current regulations. There are possible solutions to meeting the code requirements, such as reducing the square footage, which is dedicated to the particular use. So for an example, if there's multiple uses in a building and those different uses have different parking requirements, then we would apply those parking requirements to those delineated sections. For this particular business, because of their current business operations, they need a lot of room for storage of their bounce houses. And so it's potential that some of that storage area wouldn't necessarily count as this indoor entertainment use. And so that could reduce some of their parking. In addition, they could revise the site plan to accommodate more parking on site, which may be difficult, but I think it can be done. And then in addition, they can work with the adjacent owners to work on a parking easement to allow them to share some of the parking spaces on the adjacent properties. This is obviously completely dependent upon those property owners and if they're willing to do something like that. Also, it would be dependent upon if they have extra spaces to give up. So, and that wouldn't need to meet all of the parking requirements, just the difference. So those are some other options. The applicant will need to work with a civil engineer to design sufficient stormwater management for the site. This is because of just the costs associated with that. I think they're holding off on some of that more costly design work until they get a better sense for how this project is going to be viewed by the Plan Commission and the council. So this may require changes to the site plan and reduce the area proposed for parking, depending on what kind of stormwater management facilities are needed. This slideshow shows the rendering of the proposed building on the site. Staff is generally supportive of the use and the building design if the applicant can provide sufficient parking and stormwater management. Depending on comments from the Plan Commission and Common Council, the applicant will decide whether or not to pursue additional design assistance and investment in finding a solution to their to the parking demand. A future application will include a refined site plan, landscaping, lighting, building elevations, and probably an updated use description to kind of prove how the parking is going to work. This is somewhat of a unique case because, for things like restaurants, offices, we kind of know what the parking demand is going to be based upon a square footage or number of, seats in a restaurant. For this use, it's, if you look at the history of parking, it's somewhat of a newer use. And it's actually something that a lot of transportation engineers don't really have kind of a tuned in sense for what kind of parking is going to be needed. So we'll have to spend a little bit more time on just making sure that the parking works for the site. And I think, yep, that's it. So if you can just open it up to the Plan Commission for some discussion, kind of looking for what's the general feeling on this? Is it something that you think you could support? If you could support it, but maybe with some changes, if you could let the applicant know what those changes are. And the applicants here, they introduced themselves earlier, so if you have any questions, they're here.
Feedback from the Plan Commission. Commissioner Wood, then myself.
I like this overall. I think right now what I struggle with is there's still a lot of variables of there could be 300 people or 180. I don't really have much, I don't have an issue with reducing parking to extent, but I think right now there's still too many variables for me to say, yeah, I mean, only 60 is great or fine. So I think once those are tuned a little bit more, I'd have a easier time saying, yes, that's fine. But otherwise, I do really like I like the space, I like the design. I like the proposed use of it. I think it's a good way to bring something to do in Wisconsin winters with children, burn off some energy. So I do like this. I think right now I'm still kind of on the fence with parking, especially because we just went through parking with the proposed event space down the street. That it's kind of, I don't know, I'm hemming and hawing on it, but overall I do like it and I support it.
Okay, calling on myself and then Alder Swanson. Question for Mr. Severson. Do you know if is there street parking on that street or no?
I would need to double check. I think because it was designed as like kind of an industrial roadway, typically they're,
Just looking at Google Maps, there's a couple cars on the street
Okay.
appear to be parked. So that's
Yeah.
what I was going off of.
That is, we had talked about that previously, and I forget where we landed, but yeah, we could check on that.
Gotcha. I guess my thing with the parking is that, like, as you said, it's in an industrial area, and I think that's different than a residential area. Because, like, granted, like, technically, street parking doesn't belong to anyone, and just because your house is there, it's not your parking spot. However, if you have a home with a smaller driveway and you're having guests over, they got to park somewhere. If they can't park in your driveway, I think there's a reasonable explanation they can park somewhat close to your house. However, in this area, the street parking, at least from when I remember driving through, is rarely used to the point where I'm not sure if it's legal, but again, it probably is. And all the other places seem to have more than adequate parking lots. So I guess I personally, assuming that people can park on the street, would feel a lot more comfortable with fewer parking spots, just because it would allow there would be street parking and people could park there. And I don't think we're going to get a lot of conflicts with the other businesses. I mean, maybe we have to paint it yellow back from the stop sign so people don't park too close to that. But I feel like we can work something out. Although, of course, I don't. I wouldn't want to preclude like coming to an agreement with any of the adjacent businesses either, because I think that could be beneficial potentially for everyone. As far as the overall use goes, I think this is absolutely fantastic. That lot's been empty for a long time. If I'm remembering right, I feel like we approved something and then it just never got built. So, I mean, it's a long way off to approval, but I hope that if we approve this, that it does get built. On the whole, I guess other stuff like obviously design would have to be finalized and everything, but from first blush, everything looks really positive to me. So I'm excited to hear more. Alder Swanson, and then I think Commissioner Wood.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna echo both of you. The use case and initial design seems fine with me. I don't see any way that this would be a net negative for the city. I have a thought about a discrepancy between two of the drawings. So the drawing that is currently on the screen displays 4 slots, which 4 ADA parking spots, which also is the case of the more detailed initial review plan. But then there's a third picture, which I think is the next slide after this one, that has it just grayed out for like pedestrian access. So just flag that for someone that it should look more like the first two and not like the third. I'm also in favor of seeing if city staff can work out some way to set sort of a maximum occupancy, not necessarily based on the square footage, but more tied to the actual specific business. I don't know what that looks like as far as enforcement or any of that. That's something that city staff has to work out as acknowledged in the packet. But I think that I'd be okay with that. I think you'd have, I mean, it's not like a small lot, but I think that having 300 people there, well, which is like 150 kids in that building would be a lot. Like assuming you've got one parent per kid, which is probably pretty high even, but still, like having 150 kids in there, there's no way. There's no way. But yeah, if city staff can work out something where that can be agreed to, I think that makes sense to me, instead of having to, totally revisit our whole parking thing, which we're going to do in a minute anyway, and I think that, there's room for flexibility in that as well. Some of the proposed changes that are about to come up. But looks good to me to start with.
Commissioner Wood.
So I did go to Google Street View, and for whatever reason, right in front of this lot is a section of no parking. The rest of the street seems to be open, so I don't know if somebody had a vendetta against that spot previously or that lot previously. I don't know if the city, how easy it is to change no parking zones, but an idea.
Mr. Severson.
Yes, so Catherine is listening, and so she she reminded me what we discussed. So it was discussed that because it's industrial in nature, that it can be difficult for trucks to get through if there's a lot of on-street parking.
Okay.
But on-street parking is allowed, and we could look a little bit closer into where on-street parking is allowed, whether it's one side, two sides, if that provides enough, room for turning radius for trucks to get through. We can take a look at that, but it is something that that there is street parking that's allowed.
Other feedback from Commissioner Taylor.
Well, I love it. I think it's great. I agree with pretty much everything Mr. Mayor said. The only 2 points that I'll talk about specifically, I think it'd be great if every business tries to get a shared parking agreement with whatever business is next to them. I think we need to be looking at trying to more efficiently use our parking space throughout the city. So that would be great if you guys could get that. My support doesn't hinge on that anyway. I think that the street parking should provide a lot of spaces there. The only other point, I think, Mr. Severson, you had talked about how these parking requirements we have for these specific uses are kind of fuzzy. That's not exactly the right word, but transportation engineers have had difficulty setting them for these specific uses. We're not super certain on where these numbers are even coming from or what they should be for these types of uses.
Yeah,
Something like that.
I can clarify that. So our zoning ordinance is very clear. So based upon the use type, which is to be classified as a indoor entertainment facility. So based upon that, it's very clear what the requirements are. And I probably didn't explain myself very well, but there's different engineering experts. ITE is one example. So they have a manual that has, for all different types of uses, they have what the parking demand would be for that type of use. Some of these newer uses like pickleball courts and indoor play places, like it's kind of, there's not like a real defined number where they look at uses across the country and come to like an average that just doesn't really exist. So for cases like that, I think the community, the best thing is to do what works for us.
Thank you. I guess, yeah, our rules are clear. The numbers are clear. What you're saying is that the data behind why we have those numbers is not super well defined. Or my point is, I think we have to have, in my opinion, we should have pretty good reasons to reject things. And if we're not super certain, not super confident in the numbers behind some of these requirements, I would just defer more to the landowner here, especially when we do have the street parking available. So that's my take. I love it. I would approve it, though. I'm sure there might be some more changes coming, so we'll talk about it at that point. But I like it as it is now. Thanks.
Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Mr. Severson, do we address all the necessary points?
Yeah, I don't think there is any additional comments necessarily the design, but if there's any thoughts on the design, that would be good to know now.
I guess I think it looks good. I don't know.
Okay. No, that's fair.
Okay, unless there's any last minute feedback, we will conclude that item and we will move on to item 9, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the initial review of proposed zoning ordinance text amendments, which is 9A parking and 9B outdoor covering. Mr. Severson.
Thank you. Staff has received requests from existing and proposed businesses on allowances not currently allowed by the zoning ordinance. Staff is receptive to considering recent requests, which include allowing outdoor dining structures as well as modifications to portions of the city's parking requirements. In addition, recent development reviews have resulted in a desire for clarified language for some of our parking regulations. The most recent zoning rewrite created a new type of allowed use for mixed-use buildings where residential dwellings are allowed above commercial uses. So this was a use type that we didn't have before. So if we were going to allow residential above first floor commercial, they would have needed to get a variation or go through the PUD process. So now they are an allowable use type, but we didn't necessarily change the parking regulations specifically for that. So when the city has reviewed this parking requirement, we've matched the requirements for traditional apartment and condominium buildings where at least one parking space per dwelling unit is required in an above or below grade parking structure. So staff is proposing adding the following text to the parking table to provide clarity on this topic. So this is, just to be clear, this is how we've been applying it, but we think this will make it just clearer so that when you, many times there's developers, architects, designers that look through our code before they even talk to us. And so providing this clarification in the code is something that we thought would be helpful. So there's other topics that I'll be presenting, but if we want to talk about this first.
Any thoughts on this one? Alderman Swanson.
Makes sense to me. Seems like you're just cleaning up to make it, and to improve clarity. I think that works fine.
Other thoughts? Okay, no, not really a change.
We figured it'd be straightforward, but since we were reviewing some other things, we wanted to include this one. Next, so the city has received many requests from businesses that fall into the category of fitness facility / entertainment facility. Examples of these uses include yoga studios, indoor pickleball courts, sports training facilities, and indoor trampoline parks. While these use types can have varying parking demands, they all have the same parking requirement of 1 parking stall per 3 people at maximum occupancy. The extreme examples of this disparity is between indoor fitness studios such as yoga studios and courts such as tennis, volleyball, and pickleball courts. Yoga studios, while small in size, can have a relatively high occupancy on a per square foot basis. So when you're thinking about these, a lot of these regulations are designed on a per square foot basis. So when you have that disparity, it can cause some unfair playing field. Another discrepancy has been between uses that encourage spectators versus uses that are strictly focused on an individual sport or activity. So I'll bring up an example of a health club or a workout studio where it's kind of the kind of vision of is it for people to go there and kind of hang out for the whole day, and maybe they're supporting events and activities other than just the main focus. Whereas you have tennis facilities, racquetball courts, pickleball courts, where people go there just to play that sport. They're in there for an hour, whatever their time slot is, and then they go home. So those uses should probably be treated differently. Another is uses with high turnover in class schedules could also increase their demand on parking because there's typically overlap. So if you have back-to-back classes, you might have a full class, and then right after that, there's another full class. So instead of needing parking just for that one class, there's a time period there where you would essentially need more. There's a higher parking demand. The example of pickleball courts was tested by staff to determine the anticipated impact. So what's kind of like the real world scenario. Based upon our current code requirements, a 9,000 square foot pickleball facility would require 60 parking stalls. However, that size of a facility could only hold 5 courts, which would allow for a maximum of 20 players. So you could use the argument that, hey, you might have people showing up, ahead of their time slot. But even so, that's a pretty big disparity. The code requirement of 1 space per 3 people is likely accurate. However, determining the number of occupants is highly variable. So, for example, the way our code currently looks at parking, especially when it relates to this requirement of 1 space per 3 people, the way we get to how many people can fit in a space is we go to the building code. So the building code uses, for all of these uses, it's a flat 1 person per 50 square feet. And so that's how we use that calculation or ratio to get to the maximum occupancy. So this would be unreasonable for the typical court without spectators, but may be accurate for other more high-intensity uses. So there are a few options for changes that staff is suggesting. Some are more conservative than others. Based upon so one option is we could base it upon the anticipated maximum occupancy based upon the activity, rather than saying, it's a flat 1 person per 50 square feet. So I think that's probably a no-brainer that we could do something like that. Now that gets more difficult because the type of uses that fall into this category, I could probably think of 50 different uses. So we'll have to look a little closer at how that works, but I think there's a way to do that. So option 2, we could base it on the number of players plus employees, and if this space is designed to allow spectators, we could kind of do some number for those spectators as well. Option 3 is basically what we have now. So it's based upon the maximum occupancy of the building, which in a lot of cases is difficult to meet. Option 4, which I kind of referred to earlier, is that we could base it only on the areas designated for patron activity. So not to make this too confusing, but when we look at, a lot of times there'll be 2 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet is one way to regulate parking. But that's based upon gross floor area, so the entire footprint. Some codes reduce this to exclude areas like bathrooms or mechanical areas or storage areas. So that's something else we can take a look at. I think in general, my understanding of our current regulations, even though they're gross floor area, they kind of take into account that, there's probably going to be some areas that are needed for bathrooms. Option 5 would be probably on the more liberal interpretation, and that would be, especially in cases where it's difficult to say what the parking demand would be, is we can ask the applicant to provide a parking study and require a conditional use permit. So anytime we put special conditions on an application, it gets difficult for the applicant to remember what they were supposed to abide by. Also, businesses change hands, staff turnover. 15 years from now, who knows who's going to remember? I mean, obviously, it's going to be documented in our records, but there's been, many times in my career where someone, complains about a property and then only to uncover that, yes, 20 years ago, there was this condition that was placed upon it. So it's not a foolproof way to go about it, but if the city is wanting to be more flexible, that could be one way to do it. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and see what your thoughts are.
Feedback from the Plan Commission. Commissioner Wood and then myself.
I guess if I'm looking at this table, I would be more comfortable with option 2, so there is some extra if you need it. I guess my question is, if one of these facilities turns into a different business, what if it's a restaurant, let's say, does that restaurant then have to figure out how to get a whole bunch more spaces, or are they basically grandfathered and just have no parking?
Good question. So this happens quite a bit, actually. And we don't currently require occupancy permit for each change in like business owner or a change in use. Generally, it's encouraged. So especially if someone applies for a building permit, that's usually when we catch something like this. But we don't know every prospective business owner that goes into a vacant space. It's not usually, sometimes it's not, we don't find out about it until they apply for a building permit or, but hopefully in most cases they've got a real estate professional, a broker, an agent, a attorney that's helping them out, and they'll always encourage them to talk to the city first. But it is difficult to track, and yes, if you're allowing someone to maybe have what you might call a reduced parking demand, and then another user goes in and their parking requirement is much higher, yeah, that's a problem, and then that use just wouldn't be permitted, or they'd have to find another parking solution, like share parking with someone else. So, no, it happens a lot, and I would say out of all the frustrations that planning staff have is figuring out parking and what makes sense, what protects neighbors and surrounding businesses, but also provides enough flexibility. It's difficult.
I got myself and Alder Swanson. Yeah, I definitely support teasing this out to get a more precise kind of guideline. I know why it's nice to have parking per square foot because it's an absolute, whereas in how many people are on a pickleball court? Are they singles, doubles? It's potentially more chance for arbitrary judgment, and kind of max capacity or building square foot is an absolute, and you can just look it up. However, I don't want to chase businesses out of Verona because it's easier for us. I'd rather have us try to spend a little bit more time and work a little bit to get it to a point where we can make sure that there's enough parking and we don't require way more parking than these businesses need. I think I would be more comfortable, with option 1, just because I generally trust that the business owners will build enough parking, because ultimately if people sign up for memberships, permits, whatever, and they can't ever find parking, they're probably not going to come back to that business at some point. And so I don't want to say, well, we know how to run your business better than you. at least as far as parking goes. And I do think it's something that depending on where it is, if it's, reclaim or repurposed buildings in industrial space that has on-street parking, I think maybe there should be more flexibility than if it's in a residential neighborhood where, you're going to have people parking in front of other houses and stuff like that. It's if you drive through any of the industrial areas in town, most of the time there's very minimal street parking. Sometimes you'll see a semi out, but you really won't see this sort of like, oh, someone's having like, a Saturday night barbecue and there's like 20 cars on the street. You just don't see that in industrial areas. And I would guess that the pickleball, racquetball, and tennis court stuff is going to operate at least a little bit opposite to the workday. So if a place is running 7 to 3 or whatever shift they're running, I think you'd probably end up seeing these other places hit peak time, at 4 or 5 o'clock as people get off of work. I know a lot of retirees love pickleball, and Veterans Park is definitely full. But even then, when the parking lot fills up, people just park on the street and it's fine. So I'm definitely all in favor of rewriting the requirements and trying to get it down to the precise number. And I don't want to impose a cost on a business that isn't necessary. It's one of those things, like if it's a safety issue or whatever, and we have to impose a cost, then yeah, we have to do it. But like for the parking stuff, I think we can be a little more flexible. Alder Swanson.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think that, it always feels a little bad to say, hey, city staff, here, have some more work. But I think finding some more opportunity for granularity in the parking requirements is, I think, is a totally reasonable thing for us to be pursuing. As you said, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to be making things more difficult on businesses that serve the community than they have to be. I think the example of the racquetball and pickleball courts, of like, yeah, we don't need 3 times as many stalls as you can have players. I think that's a pretty good example of sort of why that granularity makes a lot of sense. I don't know if option 2 of building in the extra stalls is necessary, or just saying, look, option 1 and agreeing like, yeah, business owners are going to make the right choice for their business, or they're going to find themselves with a problem of their own making on their hands. But I think that the flat 3rd people at maximum capacity is probably too high for a lot of use cases. And I mean, this relates to talking about the proposal that we talked about earlier for Farm Fleet, which is like, that parking lot is enormous and it is never more than half full, if that. Which is in no way a slight on the business, right? Like Farm Fleet, I'm sure makes good money. It's not like people don't have a reason to go there and buy things, but the amount of parking required is just way too big. I feel the same way when I drive into Madison and I see like the Walmarts or like the Home Goods, like those. Parking is an urban blight. It is ugly to look at, and we should put as little land aside for it as we possibly can, within reason. So allowing people that need to get places to put their cars there. So I'm in favor of revisiting our parking code to find more opportunities to cut back on what we require of our developers and proposed businesses.
Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Commissioner Taylor.
That was great. Everything you said there, I agreed 100%. So yeah, to be honest, I think we require way too much parking across the board, all throughout. Everything you just listed. I mean, you drive. It's certainly not just a Verona thing. I mean, it's the entire country. There is so much parking absolutely everywhere. I mean, there are communities throughout the country, including in Wisconsin, I think West Allis and La Crosse, I was looking up, that have completely gotten rid of parking minimums. I'm not saying we're doing that right now. I'm just saying that the complete opposite has happened in some places and the sky didn't fall. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement across the board in every single land use to lower these requirements. I mean, parking, it affects other businesses, it affects other residents, I understand that, but it is an amenity, and I think landowners already have a strong incentive to put however much they think they need. If, like you brought up a good point, about if there's a changed land use to a restaurant and they need a lot more, they might be kind of screwed in the future. Whether or not we even required it, the landowner would be at a loss there because they're going to have less buyers. If they decide to no longer have a pickleball court and they want to open up Chili's or whatever, they're not going to have as many people interested. And I think the landowner knows that. I don't think we need to necessarily tell them that they already know. So I think it sounds like we all are in agreement in lowering it here because those numbers are kind of ridiculous. What was it? 60 stalls, sorry. 60 stalls for 20 people playing. So I think we're all in agreement, it sounds like, on lowering that one. But I think there's probably a lot of other cases like this in different land uses, which I guess that's not the topic now, so I shouldn't go too far off here. But anyway, the point is I am in favor of lowering this as much as we can in this case. If our only options here are the ones we've listed, then I guess that might be option one. But honestly, I'd even go lower. I guess I'd also be interested, we're talking about changing the rules overall, so I guess we can't just talk about specific applicants. So maybe not, but I have confidence that if we lowered it to option one or even lower than that, plenty of these businesses would still put in even more than what we're requiring. That's my take. But yeah, out of these options, if I have to pick one, I would go option one, but might even go lower if that was an option. So thanks.
Other thoughts from the Plan Commission? Seeing no other hands, Mr. Severson, is there anything else we should cover on this one?
Yeah, I just want to make sure the Plan Commission, and eventually this will go to the council. And this is just an initial review. So staff will take a look at this, come back with some more defined language in the form of an ordinance that the Plan Commission can consider, as well as the Common Council. In general, I am all for less parking as well. I lived in an area with very little parking, and it seemed to work just fine. However, with that, especially when you have businesses come in that do have a high parking demand, that maybe the ordinance doesn't require parking for, we are going to have issues where the city is getting complaints from residents, from businesses who might be located next door that say, hey, I had this parking and it was fine, and now another business's customers are coming onto my property and parking there. And that's, it's in a sense that is a private issue. They could tow those cars. But it is something that comes up when parking spaces, parking requirements get reduced. So, but all in all, I am in favor of reducing parking. So, but just wanted to put that out there as kind of the other side to it, and just making sure that there are cases where more parking is necessary.
What's the timeline on this? So it's going to go council next, and then, or?
It'll go to council next Monday,
Okay.
and then we'll see how quickly we can draft something. I mean, certainly there's going to be some uses that are easier to figure out than others. Courts, volleyball courts, those uses, I think, given just their design, it's a little bit easier for us to get a handle on those. Other uses, I think we're probably going to spend some more time on. So the question is, would you want us to come back with sort of the low-hanging fruit, the stuff that's just a no-brainer, earlier, and then maybe continue looking at some of these other uses?
I guess answering your question before I call in the two commissioners, I would say yes to that if we can get low-hanging fruit, And then I guess if we've had requests from people who are looking at locating in Verona, maybe you could prioritize those requests as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Commissioner Taylor, then Commissioner Wood.
Thank you. One more comment. Regardless of what the consensus ends up being on what we want these rules to actually be, just in general, I do think it is a good idea. The simpler and clearer, the better. Like, I know you talked about a lot of options. Some of them are kind of complicated. It might be difficult for the applicants to understand them and for city staff to make sure everybody's following our rules. So I think it's always better to go, we don't need to dumb it down too much, but simpler and clearer, the better. So we'll put that on there.
Commissioner Wood.
Are these overridden at all based on the zoning of where they're putting the business or something? Like if it's downtown, well, in a downtown district, there's no parking requirements, so then this is like a moot point in that instance?
Yeah, most uses in the downtown have a reduced or no parking requirement. But we're talking all of the recent requests that we've had are in areas where we wouldn't have reduced. I mean, and that's pretty typical of ordinances. Like in their central business district, they'll have a lower parking requirement just because there's more shared parking. There's more,
I just want to make sure that the zoning overrode this because downtown I would not expect parking.
Yes.
So that's what I wanted to clarify. If somebody were to do something downtown at some point, that this would not come into play.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Last chance on this one again. last chance. Okay. With that, we'll move on to 9B, which is outdoor coverings. Mr. Severson.
Okay, thank you. This is also in a response to some questions and inquiries that we've been getting. And it's mainly restaurant uses. So some restaurants have requested pergolas or covered areas for their outdoor dining patrons. Currently, accessory structures are not permitted in the central commercial and suburban commercial districts where most restaurants are located. I think that was a change that was made with the most recent zoning code. I think previously there were some allowances for like covered structures and dining areas for the central commercial district. So I guess the question is to the Plan Commission, is this something that seems reasonable? And then if so, what are some potential guidelines that we want to put on things? So for outdoor dining areas, if someone wants to have a table and chairs and an umbrella, that's completely okay under the current ordinance. So what I'm talking about is requests where people are asking if they could put up like a more permanent structure, like a pergola, or even like, I don't know what you would call it, but I guess a gazebo. Some people would call it a gazebo, where it's a permanent structure. It's got columns. It's got a permanent roof. Sorry, did you have a question before I?
Like you were talking about if like Souser decided they wanted to cover the front patio.
Yep, exactly. Could be rear, could be behind, on the side. But most of the requests we've been getting are, in the front or the side of the business. So the question is, do we want to have any specific setback requirements? Do we want to limit the number of these structures? So currently, for an accessory structure, there is a limitation of 100 square feet. That's throughout the city. We could have a separate classification for, let's just call it outdoor dining structures, where we could have a different size requirement. The other current regulation is that you can only have one accessory structure per lot. So the question would be, I guess, one, how many would be okay? And two, how big can they be? So is it okay if they take up the whole lot, or you want to limit this to maybe a percentage or overall square footage? And then, I guess lastly, do we want to limit, because these requests have come to be used for outdoor dining areas. So do we want to limit them to just establishments that have outdoor dining areas? Or, do you want to allow any business in the central commercial or suburban commercial to put up a shed on the side of their property? I would probably say no, but just want to open that for discussion.
I guess I'll call on myself first. For item 1, is a 5-foot setback requirement sufficient? I would say in a commercial district, I think it's fine. I think there's different expectations in commercial districts versus residential. Should pergolas and gazebos be limited in height or footprint? I think that, I guess I would say maybe follow the standard, like, building code stuff. So, like, I don't necessarily know if someone's going to make, like, a 500-foot tall gazebo or whatever, but they should have to follow whatever the building standards are. I don't necessarily see a point to limiting them. I mean, I'm trying to think of, like, what huge commercial space where someone could put in, like, 15 or 20. I just can't. I mean, maybe Epic, but Epic is kind of its own universe anyway. And then I would be fine with these I guess I'd be fine with these anywhere, although I would think if someone wanted to put up a big gazebo in a residential area, they should have to follow whatever the residential zoning codes are. But if Blaine's wanted to put up a pergola in their parking lot, I would be fine with it, even though they're not a retail food establishment. But other thoughts from the Plan Commission? Alder Swanson.
I find myself of much the same opinion. 5 feet setback, probably fine. I mean, maybe my opinion on that might depend on if the gazebo / pergola is at ground level or if it's elevated. Like if for whatever reason they've got a walk up, when I think gazebo, I grew up in Belleville and they have a lovely gazebo in their library park in the middle of town, and it's elevated. It's like the actual seating area within the gazebo is up 5 or 6 feet. And so for that, maybe more like a 10-foot setback would be fine, so you don't have, some kid being a kid falling over the side and rolling into the street. But if the plan is to have outdoor dining seating at ground level, then I think 5 feet is probably fine. Height or footprint, I'm inclined to agree. Like, I don't know, maybe require somewhere like between 10 and 20 feet as like a maximum height, is that you don't just end up with them building like multi-layer, super deluxe gazebos. I don't know. Someone would have to have some real visionary ideas to really push it. But I think probably height, just going along with code, is fine. I'm not that concerned about footprint. I mean, 100 square feet honestly seems kind of small for me for some of the outdoor dining spaces. Like I could see going to, 15 by 15, 225 or even more, more on the order of like 300 square feet. And I don't think I'd be that disturbed by that in terms of allowing a sizable outdoor dining area. Number of pergolas and gazebos be limited. I'm trying to picture anywhere in Verona where it would be reasonable to put up like several, and anywhere where you could put up several, I think why not just put up one, and make it bigger. So I don't really see much of a purpose in limiting it. And I also don't care about limiting it to outdoor dining. I think that I'm fine letting anyone who thinks they can have a good reason to build it. More power to them. That being said, if there's a way for us to include all these and, maybe just require a check off for conditional use, just being like, hey, bring it to the Plan Commission and let us tell you that your idea isn't terrible, or doing something to negatively impact the businesses around you. Giving ourselves more work is a thing I'm happy to do as opposed to city staff. So I guess that's where I fall. I hope that answers the 4 inquiries.
Other feedback from the Commissioner Wood?
If it's in the downtown zoning, I'm not really that concerned about a setback because those aren't they already zero lot or zero?
Yep.
So I'm not that concerned. I think the only place that I can think of Verona that could fit more than, I don't know, 5 would be Wisconsin Brewing, and I would say they could desperately use the shade. So for them, I would say go, But I guess when you say pergolas and gazebos, are you talking more about like what is outside of Hop House versus like a straight up gazebo like you would see in a quaint downtown?
Correct. So most people, yes, what they have at Hop House, that would be a pergola. The gazebo, I guess, by what I would call a gazebo is something that has a solid roof as opposed to a pergola, which is slats.
I mean, I think that, yes, we should welcome more of those. We should offer our businesses to have more people seated there as long as from like a fire safety, it doesn't pose any issues there. I would defer to the city staff on limiting it to outdoor dining areas. You have more experience with people taking advantage of rules and running with them than I would, so I would defer to you guys. But otherwise, no, I think it's a great thing. The only thing I would say is, you mentioned temporary outdoor canopies in here briefly. I wouldn't allow those just because they will take off in the wind. Like temporarily for when somebody's grilling. But my weekends are spent at markets, and I've seen far too many tents go flying in the sky and puncture other tents.
I see. So like a
You mentioned that in here very briefly, and I want to call it that. Unless they're properly weighted, they're incredibly dangerous.
like a pop-up tent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but like Miller's using it for grilling, I think that's totally that's fine. But if they want to have it out there just willy nilly, that's, for lack of a better term, wild.
Okay.
Other feedback from the Plan Commission? Mr. Severson?
Yes, thank you. So one of the questions was about height. So building code does not limit height, so it could be 100 stories. Our zoning ordinance limits height.
Okay, zoning.
But yeah, I guess for a frame of reference, like your typical 2-car garage, a lot of those are around 14, 15 feet in height. I think like 11 feet should cover most of what people would want to do. And then in terms of numbers or size of gazebos or pergolas, I think this is kind of related to what we saw during COVID when everyone had outdoor dining huts. At some point in some locations, it got a little bit excessive, and so there started to be kind of pushback from communities of, hey, this is, we want to help out the restaurants, but this is like just too much. So that was the reason why we wanted to see if there was a limitation on the number. But I think in most cases, you're probably not going to spend the amount of money to put up something if it's not being used. So I think being a little more open and flexible is allowed. And then this can always be something that goes to the Plan Commission. So if it's something that is just way out of whack, and it's something that the commission doesn't want to allow, there's still opportunity. So, okay. But I think, no, this is good information. And yeah, regarding setbacks, specifically in the central commercial district, yes, there's 0.
For the height, can you just limit it to the height of the primary building on the property? Or the 11 is also fine. I mean, again, I'm assuming nobody's going to build a 3-story gazebo, but just another thought I had.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, there's quite a few 2-story buildings downtown. I think we'll come up with a reasonable height.
I guess now that we're talking about the height more, I guess I feel like this is the same thing as the parking. Like, people are just not going to build like a 40-foot tall gazebo. Like, they're just not going to do it. In the same way, like a business owner is going to put enough parking so for their customers, it's just, I mean, maybe Epic would, but because they build that crow's nest or whatever. But I just don't. I think if we just say, hey, it can't be any taller than your building, we can just be done with it, I think.
Okay.
Last chance for comments on gazebos. At least for now. Okay. With that, we'll move on to item 10, which is reports and comments from the planning department. Mr. Severson, A and B.
Yeah, just wanted to give an update. So the comprehensive plan is currently being drafted. It'll go to the Sustainability Task Force on May 12th, Comprehensive Plan Task Force on May 12th, Parks and Rec and Forestry on May 20th, and Public Works and Sewer on May 11th. So this is taking a look at the draft. That's before it would actually go to the Plan Commission. So based upon that discussion, those changes or comments will be incorporated. It'll go back to the task force for them to vote to release it or to have a final form that can be released to the general public for comment. So that's the status of that. And then development out at Avalon Ridge, probably seen some site work over there. I think they started site work kind of late last year. They're anticipating getting to the point where they can start construction probably in June of the actual buildings, at least some of the buildings. It would be phased. So
For clarity's sake, Avalon Ridge is the one at MNPD, the West Madison Bible Church?
correct.
Okay.
Thank you. So yeah, while the process, I don't know when the process started before I was here, but I think it was approved in like 2023. So, but yeah, they're now getting underway. So that'll be an active construction project starting later this summer. That's it. If anyone has any questions?
Yeah, any questions for Mr. Severson? Seeing shaking heads. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 11, which is adjournment. A motion to
Motion
adjourn.
for adjournment.
Motion by Commissioner Wood. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Swanson. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And we are adjourned at 7:52 p.m. Thanks, everyone.